All right. Why do movie reviews? I am a big movie buff. I've watched movies my whole life. I may spend more time at some point talking about my history with movies. I don't know how interesting that will be to anyone, so I might just put a video out there kind of as an extra, and if anyone's interested, you can watch it. Um, but I thought that it might be a good idea because it's just part of my thought life. Um, I like to apply the task of critical thinking to as many things as I possibly can. I just do it constantly, no matter what. Conversations, reading, video games, movies, anything. Um, and I decided a couple years ago to do a retrospective because there's always these movies throughout the course of my life where people would go, "Oh, have you ever seen this?" Of course, the answer was no. Or I would hear a movie mentioned, or there'd be a reference. I'm like, I've never seen that. So I decided to do a retrospective, and I started watching at least 10 movies from each year of my lifetime, um, starting in 1973, and just watched 10 movies, or more, all the way up. I'm trying to go up to present day. I'm currently all the way up to 1984, um, which is ironic for today's movie review because the 1984 is a release of David Lynch's Dune. And I remember I went to theater to see that, and I will be reviewing that one as well. I'm going to review 2021's Dune, and then I'm going to talk about David Lynch's Dune in a separate review. But I went to theater to see that, but we didn't go to the theater to see that. So I rarely got to go to the theater. It was very rare. And in 1984, for some reason, my dad one day said, "Hey, let's just go to the theater and see what's on and go see a movie." And it was like, okay. And this was theater, if you're familiar with Louisville. This was off Bardstown Road, the cinema there in Bardstown Road, very famous around here anyway. If you grew up in the 80s, 90s, I think even into the 2000s, that was the big theater of Louisville at the time. And there was two movies we had to choose between. We could choose between Runaway with Tom Selleck and Dune, and we chose Dune. Um, they were not two good choices. Now, for years, this is why I did the retrospective. One of the reasons I would think of the movie Runaway and think, what if we had chosen that? What if we had chosen Runaway instead of Dune? And I would see every time I saw Tom Selleck, Magnum PI, Friends, whatever he was on, I would go, I wonder if that movie Runaway was any good. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to periodically offer a movie review. Now, my next thing is this. I'm not going to offer movie reviews from a Christian perspective. In other words, I'm not going to go to the Bible and say, not that there's anything wrong with that, but I'm just saying I'm not going to go to the Bible and say, here's how we should see this in light of what the scriptures say. I'll be doing so much scripture study here that hopefully people can do that on their own if it's necessary. What I'm really doing is thinking critically through the Christian worldview as I watch movies and as a film buff, someone who just loves movies. So I also have a long history with film. So I've seen quite a few, even though there's many I haven't seen over the years, especially in the 70s and 80s and in really 90s as well. So I'm really looking forward to sharing that on this channel and hope that, but again, the effort will be to think critically. So it won't just be that I'm going to talk about a movie, okay? I'm going to be reviewing the movie, but I'm going to be asking questions. Like, what is the movie assuming? What's the movie want me to learn? Does it want me to learn? What assumption is the movie making about its audience? What ideas is it trying to deliver through its narrative? Those are different things I'm going to be looking at. I'll also be just kind of cross-examining films in terms of what I've seen in other movies and my own. I don't have any like professional training in filmmaking, so I have done a lot of reading on screenwriting and I've written some screenplays, but nothing, to write home about. I've completed a few screenplays. But I basically read back in the '90s, read Sid Field's screenwriting books called Screenplay, and that's standard fare to this day in screenwriting courses, and it ought to be. It just has to do with the structure of a film, and I think for someone who desires to review movies, it's been very helpful for me. But it just has to do with the way a screenplay is structured, and he shows you in the book how to notice it in a movie, and I've done it my whole life, since the '90s. I've looked for that structure. And that helps you see when they're not using that structure. It's really interesting. Okay, interesting to me. So that's a lot. That's kind of my introduction to movie reviews. Again, just trying to sort of enjoy using my mind as I watch a movie. And not everybody likes movies for that reason. Some people like action movies. Some people just want to be entertained and amused. I just don't ever have to be totally honest, I just don't have an off switch for my mind. If I'm watching a movie and action bursts out and it doesn't progress the story, I'm not going to like it. I don't care how good the action is. So that's why I don't like musicals. I'm kind of a straightforward person. If you're telling me a story and you start busting out in song, I'm probably not going to like it. I just want a story. And to me, narrative is king. It's all about the story. All right, so that doesn't leave me with a lot of time to talk about Dune 2021, and that's fine because I don't have a lot of thoughts about Dune 2021, believe it or not. I'll say this. I give the movie 4 out of 5 stars. And Denis Villeneuve, I can't pronounce his name, so that's the best I can do. Denis Villeneuve, I'll improve over time, cannot get 5 stars from me, even though I think he's superb. In fact, his movie Enemy is in my top 25 all-time movies. Really, really good movie. Really good. But the reason why he can't get 5 stars from me falls into my critique of Dune. So what I'll say is this. I love how much this movie honored the source material. Now, I am not one of these people that believes that a movie has to be as close to the book as possible, even for a book like Dune, which is superb. What I really kind of wanted was something that visually parodied the acumen of the language used in the book. And what I mean by that is this. Frank Herbert's use of the English language is downright intimidating. This is one of the most well-written books I've ever laid eyes on. I was writing a book at the time. I did finish this novel. It's a 75,000 page ungood book that I wrote at one point. Still have it somewhere around here. I've been trying to hide it. I should have had the zany professor take it to to Egypt. But see, that might be Egypt calling the zany professor right now. But I found that when I read Herbert's book, it was very intimidating as someone who wanted to be an author. I was just really mesmerized by the language used. And I was like, I just can't describe like this. Very good book. And I wanted someone who could visually at least offer you something that a master could offer. And Denis Villeneuve did that in spades. David Lynch did too, but that's a different ballgame. We'll talk about that another time. But man, did he deliver on that. Also, I heard some reviewers say this. I thought it was really well said that we needed a Lord of the Rings treatment. And what he's saying is it's something that really went all out and just tried to give you a big cinema experience that reflected the grand nature of the book, and that this movie delivered. This has now made it. If I was going to have a top 5 science fiction films, it could elbow its way in. You'd have to put up there with Terminator, Aliens, Blade Runner. It's unlikely to top those films, but man, the pacing. This movie is just paced so well. I don't know if other people feel this way, but I just felt I never was bored. That happens a lot, even in good movies sometimes, where I just get bored. I was never bored. It was able to transport me to this world. Um, I didn't see the great thing about the movie is that it didn't bother with conventions of today trying to be woke. It didn't do any of that. There was some gender swapping, but it was fine. It wasn't any. Sometimes that's appropriate and can spice a character up. And I thought that the ecologist in the film, the actress that played the ecologist, did a really good job. She was very compelling and it did what it should do, which is spice the film up. One last thing, though, there was I have some complaints about the film. There was some I forget the actor's name, the one who played Duncan Idaho. He's was in Game of Thrones, kind of made his name, and then he's been in I think in Marvel movies. And I forget his name. His acting was not very good, but they made it work. The only thing is, and this is why can't give the movie 5 stars, is it's just too long. And all his movies are too long. They're all too long. Every single one of them. I think even Enemy was a little too long. I don't really remember. I'd have to look back at it. But until he finds it, I only all I can say is this: if I get some, I don't like my videos being longer than 8 minutes. I haven't made an 8 minute video in forever. Why? Because if I get your attention, I want to honor that. I want to try to be as well. You're giving me your attention. I want you to know that I'm giving you my best effort. And I try to keep my videos short so I'm not wasting your time. But if I have a lot to say that and I'm not rambling, then I'm going to try to squeeze as much in as I can and not cut it short. And then you can decide for yourself whether you want to continue to watch. But Denis Villeneuve's movies are too long. And I think he would, look, less is more always in these kind of things. And he just doesn't want to leave any stones unturned. This sin was big in Blade Runner, in the Blade Runner sequel he made. I think it was 2077 was the name, I'm not sure. I just, there were so many scenes you could have easily cut out of that movie and reduced the time greatly. And he didn't. And it was like, he just loved these visuals, I guess, and just couldn't part with them. Well, if you can't do that, you need an editor. You need an editor. You need someone who's willing to look at it. You say the movie's too long, it's boring towards the end. Everything I've heard from everyone who said they get to the last half hour of this movie and they don't even know what's going on. And that's what happened to me. I was just like, all right, well, why is this continuing? There's a part 2 coming eventually. Can we just throw this in there? And Dune probably needed to be long actually, but for me, he's already burnt that bridge a little bit. And I'll be honest with you, in the future, I'm going to be very careful. I probably won't be interested in going to theaters to see his movies anymore because it's too long. Shorten them up. He'll never see this, but shorten them up. Anyway, Dune, 4 stars. Incredible film. It was great. He is Denis Villeneuve's a brilliant filmmaker, for sure.